Okay, today we heard a lot about artificial intelligence. But what do you actually see when you dream of the future? Do you see self-driving cars, destructive robots, or us humans living in a virtual reality? Over the past decade, artificial intelligence has gone far from being a fiction in movies to being a very real part of our lives. What we saw in the movies in the 80s and 90s, it's not a science fiction anymore. Can change? Think about it. Whenever you interact with your phone, whenever you watch a video on YouTube, or whenever you talk to a bot on Facebook, you deal with AI. And either you like it or not, artificial intelligence is changing the way how we interact with the products and hence with ourselves. Today, if you want to order a pizza or book a room, you no longer need to go to a website and click through the several pages. You no longer need to download a dedicated app, but you can simply do it by having a conversation in the messenger. The whole situation, what we face today or what we can observe today, reminds me a lot the situation from the 90s. In the early 90s, no one believed that the technology, the internet, and the web applications will change the way how we live and change today's world. No one believed but a couple of guys who we call visionaries today. The same happened 10 years later when the first iPhone was released. We had a lot of skeptics. We heard a lot of criticism that the mobile will not be the future. Today, no one will disagree if you tell him or her that we should start our designs from mobile screens. And today, it's a cliché to say that we think mobile first.
So right now we can actually spot the shift from mobile first into the AI first. But the real question is, how would you approach it? What is the process? What kind of steps would you take? What would be the first and the last thing to think about? So this is the Google way. This is how Google works, and this is how Google actually built a way of simplify a list of points you need to went through during the prototyping or building an AI-based product. As you can see, mobile-first products are not challenging anymore. We have something that we actually built upon the mobile-first methodology, but still, how would we build an AI-first product? Would we use a sketch, or how would we prototype it? Would we use a pen and piece of paper, or do with something else?
And the perfect example of our first product is a digital assistant or a chatbot. But you might think now, where the heck is this smart artificial intelligence if whenever you want to talk or if you want to ask Alexa or Siri, it doesn't understand you. The situation which you can see on the screen looks probably quite familiar for you. We all had experience with what we can call stupid chatbots or not that smart assistants. But the question here is, do we always have a great experience with other people, with other humans? Think about all these situations where you call customer care agent and you have a feeling like you talk to a person who speaks a completely different language. Or when you try to get the information about where is your parcel and the person on the other side says that the parcel was delivered. So I know that it's a challenging task to design a great user experience for digital assistants and for chatbots with technology limitations we have today. But it doesn't mean it's impossible, and I would even say that it's completely in our hands how we design the user experience. Look at the example of Wobot, where that says that people who used Wobot reported a decrease in anxiety and depression symptoms after 2 weeks. Sounds impressive, right? And look, and this is not the only example. Look at other examples. Look at the weather bot, grocery bot, news bot, life advice bot. All of these already exist today and work pretty well. The most ridiculous example from Asia, a bot that's your friend.
Yeah, you basically don't need a gym partner anymore. So, some time ago, we went to New York City to face one of our clients' problem, which is related mostly with a problem of getting proper data in a proper time, because our client works with videos. So they produce videos, they post them through their socials, and the most crucial thing is going with the data they get from the past posted videos. So their problem was they want to have insights, they want to have them fast and always at hand. That was the initial problem we had to really fix really quickly. Our first approach, we were a little bit forced by client to build the whole spectrum of tool sets to provide them everything in one place. But after four months, we stopped putting money into this project because we saw that users stopped using it. And because of this is actually a good example that shows that whatever your client says to you, it's not always a good way of thinking or a good way of working. After 4 months, we convinced him to stop putting money into this and stop investing in something which is actually well known by the users. So that's why we started using Slack to provide them insights through the interface, which is actually a way how they work. They communicate through Slack, they work through Slack, they order food through Slack. They do basically everything there. So after Slack opened the API, we started digging into the chatbot kind of tool, and we actually built one which works now and which is powered by AI.
Yeah, so this was our initial approach. We went through the following topics like the bot scope, the chatbot personality, feature list, and the conversation flow. The two most interesting challenges what we met were the data format and the way how we are going to communicate it with a bot. So you can think about it as a language, as a bot language. Basically, what we wanted to achieve and the problem we faced was how are we going to talk to a bot that he understands what we want to get, and how are we going to get the results that we want. This forced us to actually think about what technology is available today and what possible approaches we can take.
Now I will show the 3 different approaches we tested. So the first one was we wanted to provide them ability to get their insights really fast. So we thought at the beginning, okay, let's create a interface that will provide them ability to click through those buttons in the conversational way to get their data. So basically that was the first one. Second one was to create a syntax which is just a simple language when we marking specific words to help algorithms better understand the query. And the third one was NLP. So if you can actually read this thing, you will know that NLP is not an easy thing. You need to build it really carefully, and you need to ship the product properly. You need to have a really huge database of words and a really good working vocabulary system.
Yeah, so we decided to take the syntax approach. We decided that to provide a relatively fast solution, we'll go with the syntax. As you could see, this was relatively easy to learn and practice for the users. We did it in the native Slack language, and from the very early beginning, with the simple syntax approach, it could handle around 40 different queries.
One of the most important things, I don't know if you guys know Slack and how it works. It works basically like a communication tool, but you can get additional features by using Slash, using bots that Slack provides. And for example, you can see in big companies, people are using Slack to order food, to pay for the yoga classes, and to gather people to go with a group to the cinema to watch some movie. Slack basically gives a lot of possibilities when it comes to building conversational interfaces. People are not using emojis by typing the emoji icon on the end of the command line. They're posting, 2 dots and just typing the emoji name and they're pasting it. This is how it works. And in the bottom of the screen, you can see the hint system, which gives users actually ability to see what they can do with a query. So, as Lukasz said, we decided to use syntax because this is how Slack works. You can type slash, you start typing a chatbot name, and you will see the syntax that you can actually use to mark the separate words to create a better query. This is an example of a query. So, as Lukasz said again, we can actually understand right now 40 different types of queries based on those specific marks. And the question actually is, were the users cool about learning new things? You would even say the first rule of UX world is actually avoid building interfaces that requires to learn new things. Yeah, only if they are completely different from what the user would already know. And we decided to use it because it's native. This is the native environment of a Slack. So this is how Slack works, and we're actually getting really good feedback from the users, and they have fun by typing those queries to get a data fast. We also had some fails. Obviously, this is the Slack window. This is just the default way how you see Slack. And this is the output of a query user posted through the Slack interface. So in this red circle is marking the slider. You can see how small it is. And this is just the one answer. So we already know what are the failures of our approach. And this is how we see future of it. So we started to developing a more powerful and robust NLP system, which will provide users 2 ways of getting their data, through the syntax, how they like, and through the normal conversation. The second one is to prepare a better UX for a more complicated output, which means, for example, for the previous slide, you would see the small slider on the right side. when it comes to this output in the future, we'll provide them ability to see this output through the web service, which will allow them to look a little bit careful on their data, generate graphs, and even create additional queries. Why we didn't build it in a Slack? Because Slack still has his limitations, and it's really hard to sometimes build the proper working solution when there are limitations like buttons and modal windows. That's all that Slack provides by default. Everything you want to put in as an additional feature, you need to write by yourself. So, and the third thing is, as a future part, it's ready to learn and adapt. We're already shifting the ability based on NLP language. Algorithm can understand the people's query, and when it comes to mistakes and missing part of the queries like time or a channel or the subject of the query, the bot can actually ask additional question with a simple button system, and user can provide an answer for the missing thing in a query. So it might even boost up the way of and the time of getting the data user want.
Okay, so actually Bartek showed you the plan for the project with a client and what's the future there. But the question is actually, what do you think about the future of chatbots in general? Us personally, Bartek and I, we believe that digital assistants and chatbots are the future, but it's not only our feeling. If you look at the fact that messaging apps surpassed social networks in terms of monthly active users, if you look at the fact that 90% of our time on mobile is spent with email and messaging, we can clearly say that this is the future, that conversational design is our future. At Tooploox, we believe that AI will change the way how we live, and so will chatbots and digital assistants. We deal with emerging technologies, and we solve problems with emerging technologies. So actually, we're happy to be here today, and very happy to talk to anyone about this kind of topics and any topic related to artificial intelligence.
So that's all from our side. My name is Bartek, and this is my colleague Lukasz. We are really pleased to have you guys today, and we're really happy that we could actually share some knowledge with you guys. What I would like to say, it was really hard to put a presentation like this because we work on the NDA agreement, which is really hard to go through, and we didn't even know at the beginning if we can actually say anything about it. So, yeah, even I would like to say to you guys, if you are working over the project that is under the NDA, try to take at least a little bit of a knowledge to share with the people in a presentation like this. Because as we already know, and you should know it too, that knowledge should be free, and we should have a free ability to learn from other people. And I think this is the good approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for the talk. So now we have about 10 minutes for questions, anything project or client related maybe. So while people think about that, let me ask you a question first. You talked about the AI first approach, and when we compare that to, let's say, desktop or mobile first, we had a clear frame of reference where we had to think about what do we have and how do we put our information in there. What is that frame, in your opinion, when we talk about AI? What could it be?
So, yeah. So your question is, can you maybe precise question, like?
Oh yeah. So, like I said, like when we were talking about mobile first, we know we had this little mobile screen and we had to fit everything in there. And this is like the first thing to think about. When we think about AI first now, like what is it that we're thinking about? Is it conversations? Is it like we heard before, varying degrees of freedom? Like what do you think we have to look out for?
So I mean, like the way what was already mentioned is that there is a shift how to design the products. Because I mean, like, as all designers know, I mean, like, if you have to design a mobile app or if you design a web app, you start from mock-ups, you start from screens, and so on. But when you have to design a digital assistant, with, for example, with voice interface, you cannot think about screens. You cannot think about, you know, how the interface will look like. It's a completely different, I would say, approach to start thinking about it. You will probably start thinking like what we showed about, okay, what should be the language, what should be the bot personality, what was already mentioned in the presentation before. And I would say like the approach and the problems you face are completely different. And yeah, and the same, I mean, like happens for the product managers, the same happens for designers, that this team has to start working a bit different. And it's already happening. And the same, like if you think about chatbots and so on, you might start, for example, your mockups or wireframing from designing the conversations, right? You might write thousands of different scenarios how it should go well. And this probably for some of the people is different than what they are used to.
Very interesting.
And I would like to fill the gap when it comes to this question. Everything depends on the context. So from my perspective, building a chatbot or building a voice command interface, everything depends on the context where we're going to design it. When you're building products, as someone said before, for the older generation, it's better to use a voice command than conversational UI, because we're not building voice command interface to build just a voice over interface. We build it because older people may have a problem with pressing those buttons, because the screen might not be so responsive, and they may feel overwhelmed by technology when technology is not responsive enough. So I would say the whole approach when it comes to building product based on AI, we should really we should also have in mind that we need to put a proper tag in a proper context.
Thank you. Interesting. We're not done yet, though. Any more questions from the audience? No? Because then I would have one more question, maybe. Would you say then also that user-centered design has to get more user-centered even, when context becomes even more important than it is now?
So for example, when you're building something, you need to know what is the audience of your app or of your product. Shifting something which will not fill the gap between the person and the product that you're doing, it may feel like a little bit not good, and you can not even be able to get a feedback because no one will use it. So I would say everything is related with the research you do. So if you do a research that this is, for example, for young people running with a smartphone, probably the context would be the conversational UI. That's actually a question you can actually go through and talk. This is
what I can maybe add here is that you should always think about the problem you try to solve. And you shouldn't focus too much if you build chatbot, a digital assistant, or whatever else. You should always focus what you want to achieve, right? And this is what Bartek says also, that you should think, many companies, I mean, like what even we showed in the beginning, that, okay, we tried to solve a problem with a, let's say, a web application, but then based on the research and on the testing, it appeared that it's better to solve it with a Slack bot. And the same, I mean, like, we have some companies who come and say, we want a chatbot, but not always a chatbot is a perfect solution to the problem you try to solve. So don't focus too much on technology or emerging tech, but try to focus on your problem and then find the perfect technology to solve it.
I want to say one more thing. Don't blame bad chatbots. Blame bad design. Chatbots may be really helpful, but they need to be well designed.
I will use that as a hook for the next talk, but since we have 2 more seconds. Question from the audience, that there is one question. Nice. Because let us use the time that we have.
Hi, talking about context, what have you done to analyze context when you're building a bot? Because I agree totally that everything depends on context, but it's so hard to improve a bot, to understand why something hasn't worked in which context. And I think typical analytics tools that chatbot frameworks use don't give me enough of those information. So how have you done it? Have you developed something on your own? Yeah.
I can take this one. Yeah, so you need to be concerned and aware of the fact that building a bot takes time. Sometimes you need to prepare a proper backend to collect all the input that user puts. And of course, there is a whole manual work underneath that you need to go through, recheck, and sometimes it takes a year to find out where is the real problem. What I'm going to say is that this system which we ship to our client is based on a feedback system. So for example, answering your question, we're providing ability to say if this output was helpful enough for the user. And we ship just 2 buttons. Sorry, at this moment it's just 1. Because we want to avoid additional clicks if output was pretty much okay. But if you're going to press, this output was not this is not the answer of my question, it will save the whole conversation with the bot, and it will send the report through the Google, I guess it's a Google Sheet, this Google Excel kind of stuff. So we have all the answers there.
Why? Sorry. So you get the data, but do you ask still why it wasn't good enough?
And now we have just 40 queries. We're just trying to analyze the 40 different types of queries. So for our UX people, it's pretty obvious why it's not the good answer. But I hope we will have a better tech in the future.
Okay, I think that was the last question, considering the time. Thank you guys very much for being here and giving us this inspiring talk.